The Rocket League Esports season has officially come to a conclusion now that the World Championship in Germany has concluded, as well as the Gamers 8 event in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. $2 million prize pool there, 2.1 for the World Championship. It's been a fun couple weeks of Rocket League to tune in and watch, but on the other side of it, the thing that a lot of people really care about is the off season, because it leads to roster transfers and changes and all that kind of stuff. As a general sentiment, for those that are unsure of what's going to be happening this off season, I think that sentiment is all agreed upon. We're talking the off season has been confirmed that it will be an extended break, and what that entails or what that specifically means, we don't really know. Psyonix hasn't said anything. There wasn't any announcement. There wasn't plans for what the off season is going to be or when the next season is going to be. But a lot of us have kind of assumed that it'll be starting in January. Sometime next year is the assumption. Whether that'll be the case or not, we don't know. But with an extended break, which has been confirmed by one of the higher ups, I'm pretty sure, for M80, which is the longest break we've ever had, which has been needed. I mean, you're talking season 21-22 started in October of 2021, and there was a 6-week break in between that season and the last season, the 22-23 season. So essentially, you're talking 21-ish, 22-ish months of Rocket League with a 6-week break. It's just not enough. Players are burnt out. I think viewership is burnt out. I think everybody is just looking for a little bit of a change. It's also good for the Psyonix staff and the Rocket League Esports staff to take a step back and really reassess about what's been really going on or how they want to restructure the league for next season. My assumption and my guess is that they're going to go to a 2-split system and then open up to more third-party organizers. I think one of the biggest issues with Rocket League Esports in particular is that there is not enough people helping out with the product. Not necessarily their fault. I think just too many hats being worn by too little of people. And it's easier for them to go the more like Counter-Strike Valve approach, where they enable third-party organizers like WePlay, like Radiant, which you've seen for the women's scene. You're seeing a lot of activations with Blast Premier and all the sorts of organizers that could be. And if they enable those and try to leverage partnerships so that those organizers are taking a majority of the workload and the burden, allows them to kind of facilitate and oversee rather than having to actively do it themselves, which might make for a better ecosystem, might make it more competitive. It might open up some opportunities and give us different looks and feels of things. And whether those are going to be sanctioned and associated to RLCS or not, I think a lot of players are asking that they aren't. They're tired that every single tournament they play in has to do like make or break for the season anytime they play a major. Part of being a competitor, so it is what it is. But I do agree that the feel of RL Esports has felt a bit stagnant or a little bit stale because it is the same thing copy and paste outside of the format. I'm personally hoping that they then go to 2 splits instead of 3. They start at the beginning of the year so you can have time during the holidays and everything, or maybe bigger breaks in between the splits, which means that you can do an off-season event, different major, more time for roster changes. Like, there's a lot of benefits to it. So with that all out of the way and kind of my general idea of what should be or where things are at or what my hopes are, let's talk about some of the actual roster changes that are going down. A couple of these have already been announced, a couple of these are otherwise, and then some opinions on them. Nupo or Nalpo is replacing Ocala Falcons. We saw that at Gamers 8. Rise's contract is going to be up for Team BDS here in August. There has been some conversations about that roster internally that we don't need to repeat, but very likely that I don't see Rise sticking around or some major changes happening to that team. But my expectation is that Rise, because his contract is up, is going to go elsewhere. Maybe he teams back up with Vatira. Maybe you see another French team. I really want to see, there's another French organization outside of K-Corp, BDS, Vitality that I really like. It starts with a G. I can't think of it. If you guys know it, let me know in the comments down below. It's content creator based. They have a really big content creator. Either way, I expect them to maybe come in. They've already teased it on their website. Potential options there. There's still a lot of free agents that are available. Marked by 8, Astral, Relating Wave, Extra, Sizen. Like, there's a lot of talent that is on the outside looking in. And realistically, the only teams that I see potentially sticking together, Vitality off the World Championship, plus they had contract extensions for like 2 years that were showcased on their social medias. Not that buyouts can't happen. Again, I think maybe 1 or 2 teams, Vitality, maybe Space Station because they're newly formed, but like who knows with opportunities and who's going to be available. So pretty crazy stuff there. Flitz replacing LCT on Gaming Gladiators. You also already saw both Power and Kansas City Pioneers testing new rosters into Gamers 8 and some of the off-season stuff that they're doing. Squishy's no longer with NRG, which we knew about for a while, and recently announced today V1 announcing that they will not be renewing Com's contract and he is officially a free agent. We'll break down that one more specifically at the end of this entire video. We can talk about roster rumors. First one being G1 looking to disband. Obviously, these all being provided by Shift. The G1 one makes too much sense. Obviously, financial woes and issues that they're having as a team and as an organization. We've also got 2 players that speak Spanish, while Oli is definitely not speaking Spanish. So team dynamics and stuff don't really make sense. The team kind of limped their way into the World Championship thanks to Rule 1. So the expectation of them sticking together performance-wise wasn't there. And if there's already interpersonal dynamics that don't make sense, there's no real point for them to stick together. Whether it'll be Atomic Dorito looking for a new third or they all go their own ways, that'll be more subject to change. I would assume that they all go in their own ways and try to find something different, especially with the way that the offseason is. You don't want to limit your options. The next one that was rumored is First Killer potentially looking to enter free agency, and the roster disbanding for FaZe. That one's got some pretty different facets to it. Obviously, Chrome came in as a late addition. I don't think Chrome's contract is long-term. I think it was just a temporary thing to finish out the season. And that's kind of where it, I think, starts at. Like, Chrome is going to be hopefully positioning for himself. Either you stay here, you make a team, we give you the empowerment to build a team here, and you try to find something. Or they rebuild around First Killer, he continues to do what he does, and they start anew. If that doesn't happen, you could see FaZe completely just disbanding and going elsewhere. You could see them going to pick something up. Roldiz potentially leaked the fact that Sypical might retire. Who knows with Mist? Like, the only criticism he's been getting is low hours. So there's a lot of interesting facets to FaZe and what that looks like, both from coaching and the high level side of like managerial and stuff. And the way that that kind of trickles down. But then the outside of it is what the team itself would build upon. It all really stems, I think, from what First Killer wants to do. What is his intentions? Where is he looking to go? Does he want to stay and build around himself? Does he want to go join others that have potential? I think it's really based upon what his decisions are. And that's what happens when you're kind of the star player. But obviously we know the baggage that comes with First Killer. And even though he's an extremely talented player, there's only so much boost in ball for one person on a team, and they looked their best in fall when he was sharing that load, when he was passing, he was using his efforts to set up his teammates. Reminds me a much better version of Cloud9 when Squishy set up and used all of his mechanics to set up Gimmick. First Killer could be doing that same thing. It's just difference in playstyle, difference in mentality. I don't know if it's being altered by outside factors. I kind of assume it is, but again, I think First Killer's got a lot of potential still, but he's never going to lift a trophy playing the way that he is. And I feel that way. So curious to see on what that looks like and what the efforts are for FaZe, whether it be Chrome gets to build a new roster and has his pickings and they go and make buyout opportunities and try to encourage, or if First Killer stays, they rebuild it. Like, again, I'm very interested to see what happens with FaZe. Third rumor that we saw was Gen G are looking to move on from Nolly, which, again, Nolly gets the boot. This is, I think, the second or third time this has happened to him. The difficulty with North America in particular is players like Nolly aren't really appreciated. They're the players that do all the unselfish things. They're not the flashy. They're not the mechanical. They're not the ones that steal all the highlight plays. They do all the hard work to set up and make their teammates look as good as possible. And for some reason in North America, that still isn't valued. To me, Nolly is a player that I think does all the right things. And while he did come in as an egotistical little shit and was super talented, he humbled himself and he got older. And because of that, has now really set himself up to be a great all-around player, something that I find extremely valuable. And the difficulty is not everybody's going to feel that way. And he is the one that's the odd one out if this ends up being true. I would assume Gen G is going to go after a high dollar player. You know, they might go after a First Killer. They might go after, which I think would be a terrible idea, but, you know, we'll have to wait and see if it ends up happening even in the first place. But the difficulty is for Gen G is by giving up Nolly, and I do agree something needs to change, your entire dynamic change, and a lot of the reasons why you are successful outside of apparently Jack popping off is because Nolly is doing all of the thankless things to set you up and make you successful. So very interested to see Gen G make a move and what their replacement is going to be to continue to have that success. So curiosity there. And then the last one, the one I'm most familiar with, is the version 1 situation. A lot of people just assuming that as soon as Com's contract has been announced that he's not renewing. This did come from a video directly from Com, so it is confirmed. They think that First Killer being a free agent potentially, Com being removed, you're immediately going to see the super team. First Killer, BMO, Dan. Couple things to dissect with that. Number one, no one can afford it. No team has the checkbook to justify spending that kind of money on one team. And if they do, Don't expect them to be able to do it for a long time unless they have a title partnership like a Mobile One Gen G deal. It's so financially stupid without salary caps to try and do. And the market is inflated, and obviously all of esports is on fire. If you guys want to hear me talk about esports being on fire, let me know, because we saw more stuff in Valorant. We saw another team not paying their players, an Xset. It's one thing after another here in North America. It's terrible. Because Com is no longer under contract, he is technically a free agent, but the players own the spots. So if Daniel, BMO, and Com want to stick together, they technically can. The complication, though, is that if Daniel and Beast Mode are still under contract, it's very likely that there's two options. Either version 1 sticks around and they find a new third and then they continue their way, or they're looking for a buyout for those players. An organization may come to V1 and say, hey, we really want Daniel. What's the remainder on his contract? What are you willing to settle for so we can obtain him and then pay him what we want? We may do that for both players to get them off of your books. It may be individualistic. Like, there's a chance that, based upon the way the industry goes, that someone can't afford a buyout for both Daniel and Beast Mode, and they go their separate ways, because that's the way that contracts work sometimes. So I don't know many organizations that are going to drop half, quarter mil plus, maybe more, to buy them out of their contract, recuperate those costs to version 1, and then pay them a salary on top of that. I think it's really complicated. Version 1 is also in a bit of a predicament, because as the season gets shorter and shorter, while the demand for the players is going to be high, that's kind of the leverage they have in the conversation, they're also burning money each month that the guys aren't playing. So at what point is the breaking point between what you're asking for in losing that leverage, because it is getting closer and closer to the start of the season, and knowing that you guys are currently going through a merger, you are trying to essentially liquidate all your assets, you're laying off all your employees, like, you are trying to get out of esports, and the writing is on the wall. No organization, the rumors are G2, want to take an organization that is in a lower power and keep their branding, keep their staff, whatever, when G2 itself is already very successful. They're one of the few organizations, I think, that are operating in the green right now. Quite well. They're actually doing extremely well since they released the New York office, and Carlos is no longer the CEO. G2's in a phenomenal place. It's very difficult for them as G2. Like, G2 is just going to pick the assets they want, pay for it, and then peace out and get rid of the rest, if they want to. Or no one can make a bid for Beast Mode and Daniel. They can wait for the contracts to expire until V1 says, hey, we just release you. Then they don't have to pay a buyout at all. And then Daniel and Beast Mode benefit, because it's a massive bid war for those two players between all the organizations that want to build with them. I think it's a really interesting circumstance. I don't know what it's going to pertain to when it comes to what the team is going to be, what the team is going to look like in the future. I don't know what is going to specifically happen, if the players will stick together, if individual buyouts will happen, what it all entails. I don't know what kind of power V1 has in that conversation, or the players, if they want to stick together, because you got to understand, keeping 2/3 of them together is extremely important for points next season, assuming that there is a auto bid into and past the open qualifiers. Like, I don't know. It's assumed that if they reform, they will qualify back in, but if you can avoid that altogether, it makes sense. This is just the beginning. Based upon being in Germany and operating as a team manager there and hearing all the conversations behind the scenes, which, again, not my gossip to spill, we're just getting started. A lot of these things that are preconceived or have been talked about for a while now are just getting started. So there's a lot more roster stuff to come. If you guys would like me to continue to do these, I'm trying to do a video maybe once every couple of weeks or so. It's just based upon how free I am or how busy I'm not, or whatever the circumstances. If you want to hear about why esports is on fire, and what kind of the conversations are there and some of the big picture things, and provide some insight, some things I have to keep to my chest because it's why I get paid as a consultant. But if you guys want to hear some of that stuff, don't be afraid to stop by the Twitch, twitch.tv/Lawler. We stream a few times a week nowadays in between meetings and stuff. Or if you want to see a more like completed video on it, or a little bit more spearheaded, or if you guys are okay with me just exporting some of the VODs, because we have a lot of these conversations on stream, let me know in the comments down below. I know we're not too active on this anymore, but trying to do stuff in the meantime when I find time and when it's something I think worth talking about. Excited to hear your feedback. Let me know down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.